SFU as well. So that's what we're speakers and we can begin.
Right on. So I'm Andrew McAllister. It's great to have you all here today. So this is actually going to be a hands-on session. It's going to be a little bit chaotic. Some of you have iPads, some of you have laptops. Those with laptops, this is going to work great. Those of you with iPads, is going to work pretty well. Some of the JavaScript that's built into Canvas is pretty heavy, and you might run into trouble. You have received a user login, so you will be able to log into this site. If you need to see the URL a little bit better, I'll scroll to the top of the screen. Has everyone got a login for start to Canvas? No. Are you like, yeah. Like, wait a second, you look familiar. So everyone's got a login? You don't have a login? Okay, so has everyone been able to log into the site? Right on. So what we've done is we've built a course in Canvas so that you can actually have a real experience of not just using Canvas, but using the open source version. So what I've done is, this is an introduction page with an introduction video, which I used using Camtasia Fuse. And I'll talk about our LTI integration for that coming up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the modules page, and I'm going to flip to who we are. So we've done a bit of an introduction, but Dorothy, perhaps you and Kyle would like to talk about your roles at SFU.
So I'm Dorothy Poxty. I'm one of the project managers at SFU with the Enterprise Systems Project Management Office, and I've been managing the Canvas implementation project since it started back in July of 2011.
And my name is Kyle Wu, and I also work with Dorothy at SFU in the PMO office. I've been a part of the project since the very start as well, as a co-op student and eventually as a business analyst for the project as well.
So I actually did a presentation at CANHEIT last year, and I think it was Dorothy and Francis turned up to that, from SFU turned up to that presentation. And they were like, this Canvas thing looks really awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? And I was also on a panel discussion. And if some of you were here for the last session, you may have learned from Christopher Bunnell and Steve Hillman about the implementation, and we did a lot of knowledge sharing. It was a very positive experience. But what we've done in terms of this flip the session is that a lot of our standard CANHEIT information is captured in the module section. There's a podcast from me, which talks about our general implementation, and then there's an SFU presentation that you're going to show a little bit of, but we're going to make it a little bit more hands-on. So what we're going to do at this point is flip to the differences between Canvas Cloud and CV, because that was sort of touched on a little bit in Steve Hillman and Christopher Bunnell's presentation. But what CV lacks is that there's no mobile app, but it is technically possible to build your own, and we're very excited about working with our colleagues at SFU to build a mobile app. There's an analytics module that's built into the cloud version of Canvas, which is very nice. And when I say analytics, what it does is it does things like identify at-risk students, who are looks at their logins and gives you some very nice graphical information that's not included in the CV product. However, they have hinted that it may be coming to the CV product. The other features that are missing are some of these things that Chris mentioned in the previous presentation. Specifically, I'm just going to zoom in on the screen a little bit here. So this attendance module, so there's no attendance module. That's an LTI that they just built. There's a chat tool. There used to be a chat tool that was a third-party tool, and then they got rid of it, and now they've built their own LTI. Again, that's not in the CV product. And then also there's a video discussion module, which is Kaltura. So if any of you, is anyone running Kaltura here in the room? Nope. There's a reason for that. I won't go into great detail, but I will say that we had 2 failed attempts to implement their CE product, which is their open source product. And because there is technically a way to do it in the open source version of Canvas, however, it was so challenging that we failed twice to do it. We tried once with version 3 and once with version 4, and no success. Support, obviously, if you're in the cloud, you're getting supported by Instructure. If you're open source, you've got your GitHub, Google group, IRC chat, and there's some a la carte services that you got at SFU that maybe you want to talk about.
That's right, yeah. We purchased some extra support services from Instructure. They did a system audit. And we also purchased services for the data conversion utility that Steve was referencing. And we also had them come on site to do some custom training, a couple days of custom training. And OCAD is a big support
yeah, exactly.
for us.
Our support is SFU.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is cost. Now, I can't go into a lot of detail. We did not go through an RFP process, so I can speak a little bit more liberally about some of these things. But when we spoke to Canvas, it's an FTE-based, well, they have two pricing models. One of them is a per-user model, but that per-user is like total users. So admin, staff, faculty, that is only a really good model if you have a very small number of users. And then there's an FTE-based pricing model. At our level, the pricing that we were given probably more than a year ago was about $21 a student. And so that was going to be fairly costly for us in the $80,000 to $100,000 annual licensing cost. And at that point, we said, that's not currently what we're spending. That's not something that's budgeted for. What are the other options? We did do a bit of a cost-benefit analysis to see what would be the human, our own IT staff FTE costs, the hardware costs, and how much more expensive it would be to run Canvas Cloud. And there is a significant difference. Obviously, you're getting a significant increase in performance and less work on your side. But we've been very happy with that.
And SFU, we did a significant cost exercise as well because we did the RFP. What we found was at the end of it, Canvas was still cheaper than the other commercial options. Our purchasing department asked us not to say anything about it, so I can't say who else was on the short list, but I'm sure everyone can guess who was. So despite all of the staff that we had to hire, so we've hired some permanent staff, some temporary staff, some of the professional support services that we purchased from Instructure, some of the additional hardware costs, it's still at the end of the day ended up being less expensive than some of the other the hosted options that we were looking for.
So actually, I don't mind answering questions. There's a hands-on thing. So go ahead.
You said $80,000, but yet also last talk you had 4 on staff doing some.
No, sorry, that's SFU. We've got 1. That was Chris who was up here presenting. We actually, well, I should say Chris, who spends most of his time doing Canvas, and then we have another maybe 0.3, and then there's me, so I handle the management side, and then there's teaching and learning staff, which it doesn't matter what LMS they're supporting, they're doing their thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's more later.
Okay, so at this point I'm going to page on to the next module. We'll get to the interactive bit in just a second. So we wanted to talk about successes and challenges, and then we want to dive into the actual details. So at first, and I'll link this to student feedback. So I'm going to show some OCAD use student feedback later on in the presentation. So first of all, in terms of overall user experience, students really say it's excellent in terms of its organization and communication preferences, and I'm going to review that, including announcements, notifications, and so on. It's got a nice inbox, which is, it's got a nice interface, much like email, but it's also a huge problem, and I'll show you why in a second. I'll show you briefly around the rich text editor, and then I'll show you a few LTI integrations, and then we're going to switch over to SFU, and they're going to lead discussions, Gradebook, and Google Docs.
For lack thereof.
Right. So at this point, what I want to do is I'm going to flip back to the modules page, and then I'm going to go to the personal profile and notifications. Now, I'm not asking you to watch this video. You can watch this at another time, but what you can do in the audience is you can flip up to, you can go up to settings, and this brings you to a page where you can actually do a lot of setup in terms of your preferred contact methods. So over here on the right-hand side, you can see that I have several email addresses set up. One of them is by default, and one of them I've added. So what you can do is you can click Add Contact Method. So first of all, you could add your own personal email address. So you can add that separately from your institutional address, and you can do that now if you want to. And you can also add text SMS. So now what this is doing is, this is one of those dark side customizations that Chris Bonnell did, where he had to add in the Canadian carriers. So you can put in your cell number here, and away it goes. So actually you can see over on the right-hand side, I'll give you an example on the FIDO customer. So if I click this link, I should. Oh, really? Okay. So you can add your contact methods there. The other thing that you can do is you can register very specific services. So you can register Facebook, Twitter. For notification options, it's mostly Facebook and Twitter. What happens is that Canvas, whenever it shows you an announcement, it will send you a direct message to Twitter based on certain kinds of criteria. So if any of you wanted to set any of that up, you can, and then I can move on. So what happens is that once you add one of those contact methods, I need to scroll back a little bit. Sorry. You can see my navigation on the left-hand side changes. And so I can actually go into notifications and change my notification preferences. And you can see here for all my various different contact methods, I can change how frequently it's going to notify me at those different contact areas. So I can go into Facebook and I can say, just send me a weekly summary of that, or, you know, a weekly is totally fine. Now, the one thing I will say is that while this is really, really awesome, the Facebook integration is not that great. It's extremely well hidden. It shows up in Facebook as a separate app. I don't know if you've ever looked at it or what. Yeah, it's really, I don't necessarily, I could share, well, I could show you what my Facebook page looks like and so on, but it's really, really, really well hidden. In fact, I'm probably going to have difficulty finding it. So perhaps not totally ideal. Oh yeah, here we go. OCAD Canvas? Oh, what am I talking about? No, it looks like it's not working. Okay, there you go. I can tell you though that the Twitter works great. So what happens is that if you go, if you're running Twitter on your machine, or if your students are running Twitter, it shows up in your direct messages. Although actually, I guess it hasn't kept any of my archived messages, but it would show up here. So it's like as if you're sending yourself a message. It's a bit strange, but it works quite well. And you can set it on all different kinds of communication from Canvas. Students really like this. In terms of actually communicating between instructors and students, I can go in here, and I'm the faculty member on this course, so all of you guys are students. So I can go in here and type I should be able to type CANHEIT. You can see there's 107 people in this course. We radically overestimate. We wanted to create lots of counts, just in case, you know, there were masses of people wanting to see this thing. And then I can pick who I want to message. So I can say like everyone, teachers, students, observers. So I can say I want to message all the students. Actually, no, why don't I just say everybody? And select all. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad not watching the WWEC announcement. And then I can also say it's a group conversation. And then everyone can see each other's replies, and I can click send. And then the idea is that it shows up in your inbox. Now I can say that this is really elegant in that it looks like email. The primary problem is that it looks a lot like email, but it doesn't work like email. So we got two pieces of feedback in our Canvas feedback, which I'll show. One of them is that students really like this, and this is the only place they ever want to go. And they never want to go to their email, or it's the reverse. They only want to go to their email, and they never want to deal with this. We talked about great, but okay. So now I'll talk about modules. How are we doing for time? We're good? Okay. So I'm going to flip back to the course. So I'm just going to go to the modules page. So modules are ways of organizing chunks of content. So each one of these things are a page, or you can see that there's different icons, like this is a quiz, this is an assignment, and so on. You're going to talk about discussion, so I'm going to leave that discussion alone. But if any of you are wanting to check out the discussions tool, you can drop in. Actually, I'll show you. This is the rich text editor. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the course. It's quite nice. This shows up on any page, discussion board, or anything. I can easily paste images via external URL, or I can use Flickr Creative Commons, unicorns, search. There we go. Perfect. Oh, that wasn't really the one I was looking for, but anyway. So I can post that response, and then that will go out to everyone. So that shows up on all of the pages in Canvas. If I now go to, did anyone else respond? No, not yet. So if I go into modules, I can then add additional modules. If you go to the successes and challenges page, we've actually made that an editable wiki page. I think students should be able to edit this page. So you can actually go in and do all those same things that I just did in that editor. In the previous session, we learned from Steve Hillman and Christopher Bunnell that you could add additional LTI integrations, and perhaps I'm conscious of time, so I want to show you a few things with that. So at OCAD, who was all here? Were you all here for the last one? You saw the okay, so you saw the image library one. So Chris showed you that one already. Okay, so the one that I will show you that is a slightly different way of implementing an LTI is the podcast one. So in this course, there's a number of different podcasts. So this is actually a page. There's two different ways of doing LTIs. You can modify the main navigation, or you can include it as a rich tool in the editor. So these are a series of podcasts that are getting posted to this page by an external tool. So we use Camtasia Relay at our institution because it's extremely cost effective. And it's hosting these files on a Red 5 streaming server. And as I post additional videos to this, they'll show up here. So if I wanted to use my phone to do something, of course, you can never find your phone when you want to. So if I were to do something, just as an example, I can go in here and grab the Camtasia Fuse application. This is now going to take too long. It's now taking too long. I'll show that. I'll shoot a little video later, and while the SFU folks are presenting, and then you'll see it pop up on this page. So it's a really nice little workflow that we've created. We're also going to build an LTI so it shows up in that rich text editor. I'll flip back to the modules page and just look at our successes and challenges. Oh, I didn't do any detail in the personal profile, but you can add in your avatar. That's why my little head's there. There's a little survey in here. This is a, I'm not going to talk about quizzes in too much. There's a quiz module. You can operate it as a survey as well too. There's a little quiz in there about what LMS are you using. So if you'd like to do that, it's a graded survey. So you'll get a mark at the end of the course, depending on, it's just for completion, generally speaking. But at this point, I'm just going to flip back to the successes and challenges page and just see, we talked about the rich text editor. I'll mention the calendar too. The students did mention that. It's really nice built-in calendar, which will show when all your assignments are due in your various different courses, and there's a feed, which you can then add to your iPhone or iCal or whatever it is, and it works extremely well. But at this point, what I'd like to do in the interest of time is flip it over to the SFU gang.
Sure.
Kyle, would you like to take the mic? I'm going to do a little Camtasia Fuse while you're talking, and then we can pick it up.
Sure, so just going back to the discussions, so you can either go from the module page or you can go from the left-hand side under discussions. When you pull from the left-hand discussions tab, you'll see all the discussions within the course. So from the instructor side, there's a few things you can edit. So you can change the settings for students can create, edit, delete, and attach files. So it just makes it a little more collaborative in the classroom, which is what most professors and students really enjoyed having. Going into the discussion itself, the options are very simple. It's laid out. The interface is really clean. So once again, you have the text editor, which is apparent on all quizzes, assignments, and discussions. In here, you can pretty much change everything you need. You can indent, change colors, highlight. One thing that Andrew didn't go over was the math editor. I just wanted to point out that
we don't do a lot of math at OCAD. We do some math. We do some, but not as much math as you guys.
So at SFU, most of our majors users are from the sciences and math department, and they really wanted to have a way to enter equations. This equation editor says it supports LaTeX, but it only supports pretty much the functions or the equations that are built into it. If you try to use another different LaTeX code, it does not register and just puts it in this text, at least from the out-of-the-box version. So from here, you can allow threaded replies. You can delay posting. So if you have to create something and go on a conference, you can just put in a date. Users. To get more people to interact, you can force them to reply so they can see some of the replies. So if you wanted to post a picture and only have those keywords noticed, then that's one way to do it. And you can also grade discussions as well. So you can either put 0 or points. You can also do letter grade, as OCAD has, or complete or incomplete. I think for most of the SFU purposes, we got a lot of feedback on the complete or incomplete because they just wanted someone to participate. You can also create groups, and we can assign discussions to groups, so that makes it a little easier, and allow peer reviews, which is something that also is a key feature of Canvas, is allowing for more collaboration.
A lot of the feedback that we got when we were doing the community testing and the RFP process, and also the spring pilot that we just did, and also summer, is, I would say, discussions would fall into successes and challenges. So some people love it, students really love it. A lot of the instructors absolutely hate discussions. They don't like the way it's organized, there's no folders. Has anyone here had exposure to WebCT, Blackboard Vista? Okay, so one of the main issues that we're having, which I think we're going to talk about later, is really around change management. So SFU's been using WebCT since 2001, and discussions is organized a certain way. Everyone got used to it. Canvas looks a lot different, and a lot of them absolutely hate it, and they just can't, get enough of telling us how much they hate discussions. So it's discussions is a real mixed bag for us in terms of user experience.
And actually, when we deployed it, they didn't have such a thing as threaded discussions. You'll notice there's a text box there to select it or deselect it, and it did help things when they that feature.
And also a feature now is that you can search. So you can search through the titles, but if you drill down into the discussion itself, there's also a search for that discussion. One other problem that was mentioned was that it displays by most recently posted. So it makes it a little clunky. Especially in a large class when there may be multiple discussions, or you allow students to create their own discussions, it may be a little hard to manage. So if I guess, is there anything else on discussions you'd like to point out at?
No, I think we can talk about it in the student data.
Sure. So the next one on our list is the grades. This is a huge change from WebCT because now you can't add columns. All the columns here are managed through the assignments tab, because you can either throw things into files, so you can do weighted assignments or weighted groups. In WebCT, you can create it and put in your own formulas and Excel numbers, and I'll just do it all for you. In Canvas, it only does weighted averages for the most part, but there are options so you can grade on a curve, which we will do automatically. About the gradebook, you can move columns around, which is really nice. Anything in blue, anything in black has to stay as is. You can also export and import. For SFU, they recommend that you download the scores and re-import it the way that is exported, just so it's easier for the user, especially when they're new to Canvas. If you do decide to create your own Excel, those are for the more advanced users, they can put in their own columns into that CSV, and it'll create the assignment in the gradebook.
Can you show something just actually being written in the gradebook?
Sure. So
quite nice.
Some of them are really simple. You can either type in the number directly, or you can double check it. Another way, you can right click here to add comments. So if I wanted to add a comment to a student, I can just do it right here. If you have a notification set to it, you'll get an email right away.
Assignments also have rubrics, so you can attach very rich rubrics to those assignments, and there's a thing called a speed grader where essentially they just see the rubric on the right-hand side, they can just go click, 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 and the assignment is done. And you can have course-level rubrics, and you can also have institutional rubrics. So like if you have different departments, there can be different rubrics for different, like the business school versus the art school, and they can have their own rubric, and you can import that. So it actually, there's a lot of power in the back end around learning outcomes. So if you're doing a huge learning outcomes project at your university, this has a lot of support for that.
And one of the pieces of instructor feedback around the gradebook that we hear a lot is in WebCT, there was a lot more instructor control over what students could see and do and not see and do. But with Canvas, the thing that instructors really hate that students do is they can go in and they can play around with their grades. So they can figure out, what is the minimum amount I need for such and such exam in order to pass this course. And we have a very vocal group of instructors who really hate that.
But on the other hand, the student feedback says that they love the what-if scenarios because they are able to kind of more think in advance, or kind of play around with their scheduling and kind of figure out whether or not they should put more effort in one course and less in another, which is what instructors don't like.
Can we mention the mute assignments thing?
Yes, so the instructors have the option to mute assignments, so they can input the grades for that assignment. Students will be notified they can't see the mark, but once you have to remember to unmute it so then the students can see it.
The main problem is that there's no way of defaulting all assignments to be muted. Because what happens is as soon as you plug that grade in, whatever notification options you set up on those screens with your email addresses and your Twitter or whatever, it sends you the grade. So the students get notified immediately. And so what happens is as soon as the grade gets sent to the student starts replying back saying, hey, why did I only get, such and such out of blah, blah, blah on my mark, and that's unacceptable. And so we tell our instructors to mute their grades by default. So they have to go into each one of those options and say, mute assignment on every single assignment.
And when they get this, yeah, exactly. And it also goes back to the inbox because they can really clutter up the instructor's inbox because it records all the thread, like the replies and your send to. So it can get a little messy from a large class. Going quickly to this speed grader that Andrew mentioned. On the SFU side, if you upload a document, you see a PDF on the student on the, I guess, this right-hand side, and you can quickly add a grade here. And once again, if you add any comments, the student will see it, and through the speed grader and through the inbox, you'll see the thread of replies.
Google Docs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the last thing we want to talk about on this section is Google Docs, really the absence of Google Docs for SFU. As Steve was mentioning, it is because of FIPA legislation. We have very restrictive FIPA legislation in BC, I think much more so than Ontario, really anywhere else in Canada. So that was one of the challenges we had because when we did the community testing, when we were doing the RP, everyone told us how much they love Google Docs and they couldn't wait to use it. And now we have had to disable it. We can't use it. We're going through a process now. We're talking to our legal department to, I don't know, whatever legal people do so there can be some sort of a disclaimer. But right now we don't have Google Docs and it's a real sore spot for a lot of people.
OCAD used in Ontario, so we don't play like that. So we're a Google Apps for Education University. So I'll show you sort of what we're talking about. You can start a new collaboration and say, I want to collaborate with a whole bunch of people in the class using Google Docs. You can call it my favorite cats. It's all about cats. And then what I can do is I can automatically add specific users to collaborate. Now, there has to be a Google account associated with that user, okay? So for our students, they all have Google email addresses, so it's not such a big deal. I mean, for this demo, I'll just pick Chris, for example, just because he's a good sport. Oh, I have to. Oh yeah, Julia's in there. Oh, that's interesting. Julia's not here. Okay. And start collaborating. Oh, right, because he's not a student. And so now I can have this collaborative document. I can then hand this Google Doc in as an assignment back to Canvas, but it should show up in the collaborations here. So it updates it here. So it's really nice integration between the Google API and Canvas. Again, this is in the CV version. Does that make sense? At this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to move on to student feedback. So if you go into the modules and you scroll down and, oh, by the way, I totally skipped over it, but there was a page about the LTI integrations we did. I talked about the image library and so on. I'm just going to page through to the student feedback. Oh, right on. Some people are saying things. Oh, there's a survey for the end of the class or the session. Okay, so here's the OCAD U student feedback. So we did a pilot in full production. So somebody was asking about how do we compare Canvas, and Chris mentioned we did a focus group. So this is one of those graphs that we created for the focus group. So we asked the students, we showed them Canvas, Moodle, and eTutor, so 3 open source LMSs. We gave them a series of tasks to accomplish, and we asked them, is this LMS easy to use? This LMS has features that help my learning experience in art design education, and is it a significant improvement over what we were running before? And as compared with Moodle, you can see people like way preferred Canvas to Moodle. Now this, having said that this is the out-of-the-box Moodle experience. Has anyone familiar with what the out-of-the-box Moodle experience is like? It's terrible. It's really bad. Like, it's so bad that it's only when, you come to CANHEIT at presentations like this and you see what people have done, I think at Lethbridge and some of the other schools where they have really nice Moodle implementations, you're like, oh, that looks great. I'd love to run Moodle. And then you go and install it and you're like, whoa, this is the worst. Like, why is it like this? Anyway, that's why that looks like that. Then we ran a pilot. And what was interesting was that I think there was a bit of shock with some of the students. Some of them were like, absolutely, it's much better. But what was interesting was that many of the faculty were new to it as well. And when we did the full implementation, this is what the student feedback looked like. So we asked them, Canvas have features that help my learning experience in art and design education, because that's what we do. So that's the way we phrase the question. And students were pretty excited. I do have to say the neutrals, a lot of those people said, well, I don't know that it really helps me with art and design education specifically, but it really helps me with my education in general. So I'm going to say neutral. And then we also asked them, there was a verbatim response box where we said, okay, tell us a little bit more. So what's interesting with this graph is I chunked all the responses, and the number one response is communication or organization is great. And then the second highest response is the faculty use, training, and consistent use of the tool needs to be a lot better. So 18% just in that verbatim text box said something like, I wish all my faculty were using it, or I wished all my faculty used it in the same way, because some of my faculty are using it in an extremely effective way, and some of my faculty are using it in a very strange way that I don't like. Or I wish that faculty were better trained in how to use it. So they're using it, but they're using it like they're just posting files and they're not using all the other features. So that was really interesting. And then if you look at all the other sort of top responses, a lot of them are very positive. It's only when you get to this 5% box where it says, improve stability, fix bugs. We had a few stability issues at OCAD U. We're past that hump now, so with the help of our friends from SFU. Did you want to talk about student stuff at all?
We did.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think I talked about most of it. Overall, the student feedback through our pre-selection phase and at the end of our pilot phase, they really enjoyed the interface of Canvas. It was very clean, really easy to see, and it's just less on a page is better. On the other hand, something that they really commented on was the ability to able to access a page or a discussion through different places. So it would be like the module or the left-hand side of the screen, or you can just kind of loop around and go through the gradebook. There's a few ways of accessing things that they just had to figure out for themselves which way was the best and easiest way for them to remember to access something.
They also commented a lot about how it looked like Facebook, and I think that's why it ranks so highly amongst the products that we shortlisted when we did the community testing. I would say the student ratings for all the categories for Canvas was higher than instructor ratings were.
So then the next question is, like, how are faculty really reacting to it? So when we ran the pilot, we ran it with a very small number of faculty, and the vast majority of them were like, this is a vast improvement over our previous LMS. So we were like, okay, great. So then when we did full production, we haven't received really, this data is not statistically significant. The student data is quite good. We got hundreds of students responding, partially because we persuaded them with a giveaway for an iPad. But we didn't offer the free iPad to the faculty, and the response rate was poor. But which is unfortunate, because you think, I'm self-interested and I want to help the academia and so on. They're like, no, we should have motivated them with an iPad and then like straight up about it. So we felt pretty good about these numbers. I think what's interesting is that it's some of the feedback was again around this area of, did they get enough training? Did they understand how to use the tool in the right way? And a lot of challenges, I think, just around change management. And this is sort of what Dorothy and I were talking about a lot. And I have a theory or a thesis that all of you can argue against, but I think in a lot of ways, educational institutions are highly conservative bodies, in the sense that they have these, You know, they're there to conserve knowledge. They have libraries. They've been there for hundreds of years and so on. And especially our faculty, with being artists and designers, they're highly individualistic. So they think very much independently. They're concerned about the university, but their fellow faculty are kind of like, yeah, I'm okay with you, but like really I'm the most important person on the stage, you know, like, and I think that a lot of that translates into you've changed a bunch of things for me and I don't like that. You've made my job more difficult to do. And those are against with the people who found it a very difficult transition. The people who were sort of maybe younger, sort of new to teaching, had some experience with other LMS systems. They were like, this thing's great. They just kind of get it out of the box. You meet certain people and they get it. And what was the one thing was that when we did the pilot, we chose people who we knew would get it. We chose people who were, or people who would give good feedback. When you release it to the general population, you get all your faculty. So you get your faculty who are scared of using email, for example, and then they get introduced to using a large LMS system. It can be, you know, pretty difficult, but we're quite happy with some of the feedback we've received, and it's been actually very constructive. We only provided our faculty a 1-hour face-to-face training session, and only half of the faculty took advantage of that, and the rest of it was all done some online support and so on. And I think what we learned was that the features are so deep that some more additional training is needed, especially around setting up assignments and grading. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just going to flip.
Again, keep going. There you go. You're good.
So the presentation that we have in the Canvas course shell, if you look in the SFU presentation module, I didn't want to go through every single slide. It's a little boring. As I mentioned earlier, our purchasing department didn't want us to talk about too many details about the RFP, so we did have some really awesome graphs that we can't show because it mentions some of the other products that we shortlisted. So what I've done in the presentation is we took out some of the more compelling comments, and not just that it was good, but things where, you know, people actually talked about what they like. And I also included some comments here from the spring pilot. So just to give a little bit of background on the RFP, the community testing, we did it last summer. We had students come into our labs, and we had some actual instructors go through a module of a real course. So we had physics and English, I think. So, and we did motivate the students with money to get them to come in, because it was August, so it was really hard to find people who wanted to do testing. So that's how we got our community testing feedback. As far as our spring pilot, so we had 6 instructors. I think we had about 300 students approximately. And the instructors were also the more cutting edge, the people that we knew would be into it. So the feedback that we got was, a lot of it was around large courses. So some of them had concerns about how were large courses going to work, large multi-section courses. Usually the answer is create a group. I find with Canvas, a lot of things are just create a group. That fixes the problem. And discussions being disorganized is a huge one for instructors. And basically instructor control. They talk a lot about that, wanting to have more control, just like they did with WebCT. I think. Yeah, the grade book. Oh, regrading quizzes, that's a huge one, especially for math and science. Right now you can't regrade quizzes, but Instructure is writing a module, a fix for that. I think that's coming out at some point this year. So if you want to see all the comments, you can just scroll through that presentation. And I also put a diagram in there about our implementation timeline, a few other little tidbits about our project.
That's great. So at this point, I'm just going to flip back to the course. Oops, that's not the course. So I'm just going to go back to the modules page. Oh, I didn't do an announcement. I forgot about this. The one feature I didn't show was, hey, I'll check. You can, yes, you can, where is it? link to, I was going to do this earlier. You can link to an external RSS feed, and I'm not seeing this. No, I'm not seeing it. Never mind. Anyway, at this point, there's some other tools in the course where we've provided a lot of stuff around from the Instructure guides. We did have, I submitted a podcast here around submitting grades in Canvas. This is the bit that Chris showed earlier with the LTI integration between the gradebook and actually submitting them into our registration system. At this point, there's a discussion here about what did we learn, but at this point, I'd be happy to open it up to questions. It's the middle of the afternoon. I think people are pretty
Sleepy.
Yes. So, did any of you have any questions, or?
If not, there's one question that was sent in.
Did you consider Moodle? What are the comparative benefits of Canvas? Can the Canvas logo be replaced? The answer is, okay, I'll work backwards from easiest to hardest. So can the Canvas logo be replaced? Yes. That logo is actually one that we created for our install of Canvas. So in the previous session, they talked around using CSS or JavaScript. So you could just use CSS to customize that part of it. You can also use JavaScript to include extra buttons or hide other features if you want to. In terms of the comparative benefits, yes, we did consider Moodle. I mean, that was when we did the actual focus group of the students. So we actually sat them down in front of the tools. And the other thing that we really didn't like about Moodle is that it doesn't really use a model view controller framework, I'm pretty sure. Like you go into Moodle and it's like linear PHP, a lot of it. You can't abstract the business logic from the way, the application is viewed. And so customizing it is really bad. And there isn't a lot of, there weren't all the robust tools that Instructure offers for doing code management. So there isn't those GitHub resources or using Capistrano to do your deployment. Like, there's just all these little pieces that they figured out to deploy. And we can, what we heard from Moodle institutions, and we did talk to several of them in our evaluation, and what they said was, oh, we've updated it like once every couple of years, and like we're terrified about going to the next version because we've customized it with 100 and some odd different features, and it's going to be a total nightmare. We can update Canvas like every 2 weeks if we want, like every month. We're like, oh, look, there's a new update. Let's update it. And we have a process and a system for doing that. And so when we heard this about the Moodle implementation, we were like, wow, that sounds really terrible. Let's not do that. And yeah, so I think that sort of answers that question.
We looked at Moodle as well, and we had a similar challenge to you in that we were looking at a very basic install. Generally, the user interface, people really, really disliked it. Yeah, I think Moodle even ranked lower than some of the other ones. So definitely the Canvas user interface ranked a lot higher than Moodle. Although in BC, the high school system uses Moodle. So I think some students just like Moodle for the fact that it was the same as what they use in high school. So we found like the first year students liked it more than some of the older students who had exposure to other things. Like,
I mean, I know there are definitely some things that Moodle will do that Canvas doesn't do, and I did not touch on all of them. Like Canvas doesn't have really great SCORM support. In fact, it doesn't really have any SCORM support because there's some security issues with SCORM because it's using JavaScript in the browser. They are working on, I know, some integration between Adobe Captivate and Canvas, but that's a work in progress. But again, the LTI stuff is just so powerful. Like, you can go to a website like this. You can say, oh, I'd like to include this TED Talk thing in my course. I'm going to go to my course. I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to say, I'd like to add that external tool. Okay, I'd like to add it by URL. Okay, great. I'm going to paste that in there. I'm going to call it TED Talks. I'm going to save the tool settings. Oh, of course, now it's not going to work. Oh, yay. So then I can go and I can create a page. Say I want to create a new page. Testy TED Talk page. Create. and go to that page. Oh, look, there's this little icon now. Oh, look, I'd like to include this video. Oh, great, now there's a video here. Now I can just save the changes. Like, it's just kind of that easy. Like, I just included that LTI. Like, it's just really, really nice. And this editor is extremely powerful. Just the whole, you know, if I wanted to go to this page, say, oh, I want to include this thing from the WWDC page. Just drag that over there like that. Oh, look, I'm gonna resize it now.
Okay, now you just showed me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's stuff like that, or like there was actually your director of the Teaching and Learning Center. She teaches a course in HTML, and she had an entire course, I think, in Moodle and another site. She was like, "Oh, I wonder how to take this over to Canvas." Select, copy, go to the other page, paste, and it preserved all the web links and everything. We just took all the AODA training, so the disability training, and moved it to Canvas in a course, because we were like, oh boy, the way that it's done right now is really not very good. So I thought, oh, well, you know, we should just move it to a Canvas course. I think I did this in an hour, just moving this content to a Canvas course. Cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste. Do all the quizzes, and do the quiz and everything else. Are there any other questions?
So you touched on it a little bit, but aside from the wretched user interface, the prettiness of it, does Canvas have all the functionality that university needs?
Repeat the question. Okay, so there was a question in the room. So does Canvas have all the functionality that the university needs? And I would say, like when it came down to it, we came up with a grid of all the features of all these learning management systems, and in a lot of cases, a lot of those things are evolutionary. So you can't always tell whether you can do these requirements matrix and say, oh well, of course, you know, this thing is extremely important. Have people like rank them and all this kind of stuff. But when you actually get them in the room and you get them doing their coursework, then you discover that it's actually not really very important at all. So on the one hand, they have omitted a lot of features. So there's a kind of elegance to that. On the other hand, they omitted some features and they're missing. So, so like I said, SCORM support, it has come up a couple of times, only when we're working with external things. So like I said, this AODA training thing, I don't know if you guys have SCORM modules or.
Yeah, I would, yeah, that's a big one for us too. Yeah, but for us, I would say it's more, what people are struggling with is there are a few things that that Canvas cannot do that WebCT could do. And everyone in their mind is comparing, like that text column in the grade book isn't there, regrading quizzes, discussions. They really liked how, a lot of people liked how there's, WebCT is all folders. So it's, and so some of the feedback that we got actually in community testing was 1997 called and they want their user interface back, right, for WebCT because it's all folders. But some of the instructors absolutely love it. And we actually had one of our analysts built a page. Some instructors are refusing to use Canvas unless they can have it look exactly like WebCT with all the little folders. They don't like the left-hand side. So the short answer to your question is no, it doesn't have all the functionality, but I would agree with what Andrew said. It's, you know, how important is some of this? We can live without it, or we know some of it's coming, like regrading quizzes. We know that that's coming.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it is change management. It's, we have a lot of the 1 hour Explore Canvas workshops that we're doing. We have specialty gradebook workshops. Our teaching and learning centers going out and doing special sessions with different departments to sort of get them on board with, hey, everybody, this is the new way of doing stuff, and, you know, try to forget about WebCT, because it's just, you know, we're talking about something totally different, and, you know, if you open up your mind to it, maybe you'll like it a little bit better, but it's the opening up their mind part that we're having a challenge with right now.
If you go to help.instructure.com, they have these are all feature forms where people are voting up certain features that are missing. And certainly, but a lot of them are small. Some of them are large, some of them are small. Like, yeah, so so the large ones are, it has really weird support for sections. So in our install of Canvas, every section of a course is a course. So if one instructor is teaching multiple sections of a course, they have to duplicate the content across those courses. They can do that using a bulk copy, but sections lack certain specific features. Like it used to be that, although they fixed that in the course of this year, like assignments never used to have differing dates in different sections, which doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you not have differing assignment dates per section? Because they happen on different days, right? That's been changed. Like, since we've rolled it out, they've already fixed that. Another one that people really hate is in the inbox. Oh, look, somebody replied. All right, thanks. So I can see this message. There's no CC field on here. Oh no.
That comes down to that being able to stay current with code too, because Instructure is getting this feedback from all the American universities that are using the cloud version. So they're rolling out these features frequently. And if you don't stay up to date on code, you're going to very quickly fall behind and lose access to these new features that are being pushed out on a very regular basis.
What kind of visibility do you have in their roadmap for the open source version?
Well, their GitHub is open. And so anyone can look at GitHub and see all the events and everything else. But the actual roadmap, I'm not sure. Do you know if it's a URL that includes some info about their upcoming releases and things like that?
They do have
I
a
don't know how far in advance they talk about that. That's the question we have in Instructure.
Yeah.
They do have a page where they talk about betas and what they're doing, but that's very short term. Sometimes when you go into one of these features, there'll be a stamp where it says planned, but they don't tell you when.
They don't tell you when. Yeah.
So yeah, so it is problematic sometimes where you're like, okay, it's great, this planned, I want it now.
Yeah. Or we just call the director of product development and say, hey, this is really important when you're putting this in, but because we're on the community version, not the cloud version, we're kind of down there.
There's a question here, and Chris had a comment, and we have to wrap.
Okay, we have a requirement that all of our content is accessible.
Yes?
January 1st, 2014. Is the product accessible?
According to Instructure, it's very accessible. In fact, what they say is that they're more accessible than anyone else. We've had an audit done on it by the Inclusive Design Research Center, who are at OCAD University, and they found a few deficiencies with it. And Instructure has actually been very responsive. Well, they've been very responsive in the sense that we gave them the report and said, can you fix these problems? And they've been fixing them on an ongoing basis. There were some areas where the ARIA regions, so like where you see messages at the top of the page, they were not readable by a screen reader. And some other areas where it was deficient, but overall it's pretty good.
Yeah. Are there tools for instructors who might create content to ensure that their content is accessible? Do they have a way to check it?
No, really, they would have to use something like Wave. Like that's the only thing I know of because it's authenticated. Unless it's a public course, they'd have to use that Firefox plugin. Chris, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say about feature requests. I found that they're pretty slow to implement features that are requested from the community. We've had feature requests with threads of more than 100 people saying, "Yeah, we need this. Like, it's crucial." And it's been going on for 2 years. No, well, this particular one, finally they've started implementing that. But yeah, don't rely on the feature requests. Don't hold your breath for them.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's make this speakers.
Thanks very much.
Just to let everybody know, there's going to be some special treats in the meeting center conference for